Disconnection number 9, postural disconnection, or in other words, postural inefficiency. So regardless if your ultimate goal was to throw it harder, command it better, reduce arm pain, create better deception and swing and miss stuff, or simply be more consistent, or all of the above, all of these can only be created with a more healthy and durable arm. Your first order of business now that you are home is to greatly reduce or eliminate this postural inefficiency. Everything we do together going forward will be predicated upon and be sustained in large part because you have become a more efficient mover and thrower. However, one word of caution here as we begin. Velocity gains will be difficult to obtain and quite frankly impossible to sustain if we don't first have a healthy, durable arm. Arm health and durability is closely related to stress of soft tissue, thereby making the immediate work ahead for you regarding reducing or eliminating your postural disconnection to be of vital importance. Please don't miss or underestimate its importance. So let's now talk about disconnection number 9, postural disconnection. So what is a postural disconnect or postural inefficiency? Well, that's when the spine changes its orientation significantly during the acceleration phase. Here we have a Red Sox pitcher at weight-bearing heel plant, and then just 2 frames later to see how the posture and spine is really significantly different. And that change, that sudden change in posture is really going to add exponential stress to the anterior shoulder and medial elbow. So the key thing here is of all the disconnections, and there are 11 of them, the postural disconnection is really a very unique one. It's the most unique in all of them because it actually is affected by almost every other disconnection. So it's an aggregate disconnection, meaning its causes are often multitudinous. There's many causes to it and nearly always has multiple contributors. So it's not just one thing that usually causes a postural disconnection that's severe. It's a summation of several factors. So what are these factors? What are these contributions? Number 1 is a structural limitation. So if we have an ankle mobility issue, that could cause us to have to change our posture to be able to compensate for that ankle mobility. I want you to remember the body accommodates a lacking in one area by a compensation in another. Very much like when I lose a little bit of my sight, my hearing gets better. And so on and so forth. The body really does a good job to try to pick up the slack. Where one area is weak, it tries to draw from the reservoir of other areas. So if we're lacking in ankle mobility, sometimes we're going to try to compensate that with having a posture change. Same thing with knee stability. A lot of young men have either a knee issue, they have to wear a brace on the knee, they have a football injury, or they have a sliding issue, or they have a quad issue, and so their knee isn't very stable. And when that knee isn't very stable, and it's where it's flexing through, or you have a lot of these things, or it's wobbling, you're going to see a postural disconnect. You're going to very often see that posture trying to compensate in one way or another for that instability of the knee. Hip mobility. This is probably the single most common one because when our hips are kind of locked and we can't really work our hips with full mobility, then that's our body has to compensate, and that's when we have a postural disconnection. Lumbar spine stability. A lot of times we have the low back issues, and when we have that, we're going to try to compensate from that low back issue by tilting more and taking some of the stress off the lumbar spine. That could indeed cause a postural inefficiency and a postural disconnection. Thoracic spine, the second most common. Hip mobility is the most common, what we see. The second one is thoracic spine mobility. That's the ability to rotate around that mid-back, the spine that has the ribs attached to it. That's thoracic spine. And if we have an immobility there, if we have a mobility constraint, then your posture has to change to try to compensate for that. And then we have scapular stability issue where the scapula is not as stable. We have a lacking in that area, so the body tries to compensate for that. And then we have shoulder mobility issue, where we have some trauma to the shoulder, and the body tries to compensate one way or another to try to relieve stress to that shoulder, and we also have that postural disconnect. And then probably the third most common is just a weak core. We either had an oblique injury, or we have some sort of abdominal strain, and then our body just kind of tilts or fades one way or the other, trying to avoid that. And remember, the trunk and spine is simply a conduit from that's going to connect the lower body that is producing the velocity and transfer and transmit that energy to the upper body and then out the arm. And if we have some issues with that, that's what's going to happen. We're going to have a postural disconnect as a result. So that's the reason why you really want to pay attention to this sheet. A lot of young men come in and they take a look at this and they go, oh, okay, that's nice. But they really don't pay attention to it. Your structure may be the very cause, 90% of your cause of everything that you're having. If you have a flat tire on your brand new Maserati, for example, it won't matter how good the driver is. It won't matter how big the engine is or how fine-tuned, how good the fuel is. It won't matter if you have a flat tire. You have to fix the flat tire first. And I think a lot of times we just disregard the flat tire and we think that's gonna happen. We're going to be able to get really elite pitching level with the flat tire. You can't do that. So you got to fix that first. So the number 2 part is movement pattern inefficiency. So when we have an issue, it's either structural or movement pattern. This is the most common. And then look at all the movement pattern inefficiencies that we can have to go along with those structural issues. And mostly the time, a movement pattern inefficiency comes along, especially with the posture, by the young pitcher trying to look for velocity in all the wrong places. So first of all, he has not very much momentum. He doesn't have very good rhythm and tempo, and so he's got to find velocity from somewhere, and then he just yanks his head and his trunk trying to create it. He's trying to look for velo from somewhere. Then also a lot of times we have a counter rotation where he thinks he's creating some extra energy by just really kind of coiling. He doesn't realize that coiling now has thrown all these things off, and now he can't direct that energy in a straight line, and that gets discombobulated, and then we have a postural disconnect as an accommodation or compensation for that problem. And then we have poor, ineffective direction. A lot of times guys drift way across their body or open up. And when you have that inefficiency on direction, then your spine has to try to fill in the gaps, and then we have an issue. Lead leg disconnection. This a lot of times the guys are so dominant in their lead leg, and when they're very dominant in their lead leg, there's not the posture is going to be really hard to get stabilized because it's like shooting a cannon out of a boat. It's so unstable. It's so wide open. So it really finds a difficult situation to stabilize and rotate around it. So lead leg can be really an issue for a postural disconnection. Also, lack of pelvic and glute activation. Obviously, we know that the back leg is what we really want to have as our dominant force. Our back hip and our back leg and our back foot, all that becomes the posterior chain. That becomes the prime driver, the main driver for everything. And if we don't have that, then obviously we need to get the energy from somewhere. And once again, we create it by a posture change. Lack of poor back hip rotation. That's just an inability to actually finish what we're started. Once we get to a certain point, we leave that dominance of our back hip and back leg too soon, and then we dominate with our trunk and our upper body trying to deliver the baseball, and we have a postural disconnect. And then the last one is out of sequence glove side. And unfortunately, this is becoming even more prevalent because back at one time people said tuck the glove, and that was bad enough. And then for the most part, that's kind of faded from the lexicon of people. I know there's some people have been told to really tuck their glove, but you know, in the last 5 years, we're seeing less and less of that. But now the new terminology by some people who really have misread, in my opinion, what this is about. They'll call it a positive disconnection, where you really want to pull that glove and really have that become the primary prime mover, and you never want to have as the prime mover the distal parts of the body. It is a poor choice. What should happen is the proximal part of your body, or the center of your body, your hips, your core, your trunk, your mid thigh, all the way mid thigh to lower back. That becomes your primary mover. And if you don't have that, you're going to have problems. And if you become really on the perimeter with that glove side and you do a positive disconnect, you're going to have some issues. So let's really quickly run through the contributors. One, there's counter rotation, where you take your back leg. As you can tell, the four on the left really take their back leg around. The four on the right, as they lift their lead hip, the directional hip is taking their rear end. Their back hip is leading their front, pushing their front hip, and they're getting their back, their rear end behind their heel as they go forward. So here's counter rotation. If you see the young man with the Cincinnati Reds, that is a counter rotation. And you see Nolan Ryan with the exact opposite. He is back hip dominant. And then because of these problems, we have Jared Weaver, who is way across. He's 24, 25 inches across his body, and then he's got a zig to zag, and he's got to come back. He's got to have a posture change just to deliver the baseball into the zone. Of course, Jared, when he first came up right out of Long Beach State, was 94, 95 miles an hour, one of the premier pitchers in the game, and he left the game throwing at 82, 83 miles an hour. And so how do you lose 12 miles an hour? Well, you lose it by putting that much stress on groin, low back, that sort of thing. That's going to be a problem. So landing across your body, then requiring a posture change to throw the ball in line, this is one of the more common causes and contributions to a postural inefficiency. Lead leg disconnection, see the picture on the left. The lead leg is already starting to open. Well, that's good. That's already opening him up. Then also when he does land, there is no stability there, and he's going to have a tendency to fall off to his glove side, and the head's going to follow. The inability for a lot of people to load while they move forward. If we can load while you're moving forward, your posture will stay really intact and really efficient and really connected for the most part. When you start to unravel really early in your delivery, and you don't get your heel behind your rear end, and you don't have a good glute activation and glute load, it's going to be very difficult for you to have a very efficient posture if you're going to throw it very hard at all. Another case of emphasis, we need pelvic activation, where you're going to keep your front hip slightly than your back hip and your knees together for as long as you can. Here's the glute load, where we're taking our rear end behind. This is what really saves. You can imagine Chapman in the far lower right. He's not going to have a postural issue because, look, that's all locked in. There's co-contraction all the way up, and so that's much better off. These guys are just really with the center of gravity, really maintaining it, actually having the prime mover be the back hip and back knee and back glute. That's what we're looking for. One of the ways you can do that is make sure you create co-contraction. Keep the whole foot pressed into the ground. Don't let yourself get up on your toe or get up on your heel. That's going to create or complicate your direction to the plate. And once you do that, it's a problem, because now you're compensating every single time for your first move. The prime mover again is the back hip, obviously, and not the front hip. And so the top four are all back hip dominant. The bottom four are all front hip dominant. As you can see, we're really trying to be back hip dominant. So finally, the glove side disconnection. Here's what can happen: we're asymmetrical, and that's going to lend itself to the posture changing as we go into acceleration phase. There's the yank. This is the positive disconnection that's being taught. And that's movement out of sequence. Obviously, we're going to want to scap load. We're going to want to lock in that scapular traction on the glove side. but there's no yank on that. There's no continually pulling on that. There's only just a scap load and a stabilization, and we're going to rotate around it. And then we have the soft glove where there's really nothing going on. See how the glove is wide open. And then we have the low and dead where the glove just kind of falls, where you're going to have a tendency to really kind of rotate to that part as you go down the mount as you're releasing to it. And then we have the block, which is one of the worst things you can do, is that your glove now is keeping you from actually rotating around that hip. And a lot of times then we have this postural disconnect, trying to find a way to manipulate our body and throw a baseball in a straight line. So what are the verbal cues? Well, as I lift, I'm on my way. Momentum is a force multiplier, Dominate with the movement with the back hip and back leg, not the front hip, not the front leg. It simply supports the back side. Keep the whole foot pressed into the ground as you move forward. Keep the front hip slightly higher than the back hip, and keep the knees together and stay athletic as you do it. So connection, we have upper body connection, we have lower body connection, and the trunk and spine are the things that connects the two. It is the bridge. It is the conduit for the lower body energy that's created by the trunk and the hips and the legs, and it shoots that energy all the way up out the body, out through the fingertips. So we have two different things. We have connection on the lower half. We have connection on the upper half. Not all postural disconnections are equal. We have some disconnections that are small or non-existent, and we have others like that picture of the red sock young man. That's a 10, where we have a large and significant postural disconnection within that acceleration phase. The greater the disconnection or the greater the discomfort to any medial elbow, anterior shoulder, the more concern we have for this particular inefficiency. And I would say a large percentage of people with Tommy John surgery or labrum tears had at least this as a contributing factor. The postural disconnection led to or exacerbated already some extra stress that is going on. So why is a postural disconnection possibly problematic? Well, I just kind of alluded to that. The major contributor to energy should be the posterior chain. And so if the posterior chain is not, for whatever reason, it's not doing its job, your posture is going to try to fill in the slack and generate some energy and power for you. And that's exactly when this happens, when you get stress to the medial elbow and anterior shoulder. It also adds distance and time required to get an ideal launch, often adds considerable stress to anterior shoulder and medial elbow. And here's the thing that you need to know is that let's start with the third one down and work our way back. The first thing that shows up is slower recovery. That means that, or slow recovery. That means you throw on Thursday night and you have to throw next Thursday night. After a couple outings, you just can't quite in 7 days be fully recovered. And if you play professional baseball, you're going to have to be fully recovered every fifth day. If you're a reliever, you're going to have to be able to throw back-to-back days. So recovery becomes really important in that way. Postural disconnect makes it more difficult to release the ball considerably out in front. Let's go back to 2 and 3 here. The second thing that shows up is early fatigue. So if maybe we recover okay, but then it's going to show up also with early fatigue. That means I'm going to throw at 90 miles an hour when the game starts, but by the third or fourth inning, I'm already down to 84. And this is so common, and that's a sign that this postural disconnection is indeed creating extra stress to soft tissue. And then we finally get, if we don't get it solved, we finally get tightness there. We have tightness of the forearm, tightness of the bicep, tightness of the anterior shoulder. People will say, oh, it's not really pain, but it's just tightness. And then we go, if we keep going at it, then we slowly move in to tenderness. It's tenderness. We feel the tenderness on our forearm or bicep or anterior shoulder, and then eventually we get to full-blown pain. So to medial elbow or anterior shoulder. So this is the kind of the slice that, or the slide it goes down. It starts at slower recovery, then it goes to early fatigue, then it goes to tightness, then it goes to tenderness, then eventually goes to pain. And so this is the common course, all too common if we don't get this solved. Also, it has pitches to the arm side and added difficulty in creating consistent breaking ball. That's going to be a problem. And then you're going to have difficulty throwing a ball at long toss over 250 feet as it really peels off, as your trunk and spine is really disconnecting. And also you're going to have some people say to you, man, you've got really good arm side run. Well, unfortunately, I'm sure it's pretty big along arm side run, but what we're looking for is later arm side run, short and late. We want late life, not big early arm side run where somebody can actually predict and see that from a long ways away. We really want late life, and when you really have this postural disconnect, it's very difficult to have late life with that. So as I said, postural disconnect makes it far more difficult to release the ball considerably out in front, out in the green. So we see a young man here on the left. He has an early launch and a postural disconnect. See how the head is looking down? This is really common amongst young pitchers. And we have Felix, who is earlier launch on the left, later launch on the Chapman on the right. Early launch, once again, see the head and eyes pulling off. Late launch by Max Scherzer. Early launch, late launch, early launch, late launch. So we really want to have a late launch. And so any sort of postural disconnect is going to be very difficult to have that late launch. And the concept that I want to really reinforce today is the concept of staying connected. The concept is exactly what common sense tells us it is. You can feel connected and you can actually feel disconnected. It's not about choreographed movement pattern. It's about being athletic, dynamic, free, loose, and yet connected. So how do we minimize or eliminate the postural disconnection? The best drills that we can. This is really remarkable stuff. You're going to blend into your throwing drill work, double crow ops and lead leg stabilization ground force holds. So you're going to blend those in, and so you're going to hold a double crow op. That's self-explanatory. You're going to hop twice and throw. But then leg stabilization ground force holds. That is that's the picture here. I want you to hold that position right there after you throw, and that is really stabilizing, and it's really good. And you blend that in. You don't just hold it all the time. You blend in a hold, then throw one without a hold, then one with a hold. So really, we're going to utilize tools that encourage awareness and connection. We have Justin Verlander with a connection ball. We have Jonathan Massey with a connection club and a belt club. We have Ollie Katie down at the bottom left with the wrist weights, and then we're going to have a duro throw sock. So we're going to utilize drills that are up-tempo and encourage athleticism and decrease time and tension. A lot of times, for example, somebody takes all the momentum away from you, really slows you down. A lot of times that even creates now a postural disconnect because you're slow, and you try to go from gear 1 to gear 4 in 1 millisecond. You can't do it. You'll have a little bit of a drag, and it's the same thing with this. So inefficiencies require two things. They require time and tension. If you can reduce the time and reduce the tension, the inefficiencies are reduced or minimized, and sometimes completely solved. So how to utilize the connection club? This is a really new tool for us. You're going to notice Garrett's going to do a martial one, then a torque, and then a step line with arm swing. Watch the posture as he does this. It's stable, and he just rotates around that trunk, and that leg firms, and then the body rotates around it. This is exactly what we're looking for. Quiet and yet rotates around it. So the basic correction template. Now we know what postural disconnection is. How do we solve it? How do we get through it? Well, first of all, you're going to begin your warm-up with cog number 1, wake-up warm-up that has all these different ones. Make sure you're blending all those in. You're not just keeping the same one over and over again. create a lot of variety. And then we go to cog number 2. Make sure you get all your arm care and your arm prep as you're starting to ramp this thing up. And on cog number 2, it has all those with you. It has what you do with the bell club or the connection club, and it gives you that drill series, wrist weights and its drill series, the Durthrow sock and its drill series. And then we're going to start our throwing, and that will begin with cog number 6. And we're going to start with decel 1, marshal 2, always starting with deceleration work. Then the next most essential training piece is eliminating your postural efficiency by blending. And here's what you're going to do. You're going to do a walking torque, and then you're going to do a walking torque again, and you're going to do a ground force hold. And then you're going to do a double crow hop, and then you're going to do it again, and you're going to do a ground force hold. And then if you have the equipment to do it, you're going to do a drop into, and then you're going to do a drop into hold. So that is what the blending is. You do one without the hold, one with the hold, and then move on. And what the hold will do is it will quiet down and keep your front leg from working independently, because you're going to have to stop and hold yourself from that position. So it really does encourage the lower half to work through stabilization. And then we do step behind with arm swings and blend it all the way. We do quick picks and double crow hops, and we do jump backs and double crow hops, and we do double plays and double crow hops. And if we have a heavier day where we now can work actually a little bit on the lower half, we can do torques, double crow hops, and ground force, and we can just do the whole thing again, but this time with the lower half drills, BLRs, box swept torques, hook'ems, double crow hops, and drop intos. So how do we, now we have the template, and how do we customize that? First of all, don't forget your structural alignment mobility. Don't forget your flat tire. Make sure you're taking care of that. Make sure you're getting everything in the green, especially anything in the red. Let's get that over to at least a yellow. And then after we do that, let's make sure we get as many yellows into the green as we possibly can. Excuse me. So now we are going to take a look at what I really strongly suggest you take a look at your week in its entirety first, from Sunday to Sunday. Because in that series of 7 days, you're going to have a couple days that are your best chances of work, and you're going to have a couple days that it's going to be very, very busy. And the days that are very, very busy, you can make them light days, and the days where you have a little time to work, you're going to make those heavy days. You just don't want to make you don't want to make 2 heavy days in a row. And really what you're looking for is you're going to try to cycle in 3 medium days, 2 light days, and 2 heavy days. And you're going to really try to schedule your week every single week, a week in advance. And the reason for that is that maybe this week, Wednesday, is an awesome day to work, and then next week, all of a sudden, you have a church or something, and all of a sudden, that doesn't work at all. And now your week is completely different. So don't play it by ear. Actually plan it out. The reason you want to cycle in heavy, medium, and light is really quite obvious and makes a lot of sense. Too high a workload and you're not going to be able to recover. You need, if I just bench press my max every single day in a short order, I'm actually gonna get to a plateau and I'm gonna go backwards. And so just working without cycling in is not a good idea. On the other hand, we get some kids that are just they're not enough on the work side. And if you have too low a workload, you're not going to see any improvements. As John Wooden would say, nothing will work unless you do. The key is to cycle in light throwing days, medium throwing days, and heavy days every week. It'll take about 10 minutes. If this helps you with your schedule. If all you have is 10 minutes, you're going to do just your decel stuff. And if you have 15, you're going to add to the decel stuff. You're going to add in these with the double crow hop and with the ground force holds. You're going to blend all those in. So you do step behind with arm swings, and then come back again and do step behind arm swings with a hold. And then you're going to do double crow hops, and then you're going to do double crow hops with a hold. And that's what I'm talking about. So you're going to blend those in. And then if you have 30 minutes, you add in these. You add in quick picks, and then ground force and then ground force holds. And then you go jump backs, and then double crow hops, and then ground force holds. So you just blend all that in together. 45 minutes, you can now add these lower half drills, BLRs, box squat, hook'ems, double crow hops. And then with 1 hour, you have really a long time. You now can add double crow hops and ground force holds, blending to the mound. You can take it all the way to the mound. The importance of the DuraThrow sock, don't miss this, because they're going to be really important in the time crunch, because the key to changing that postural disconnection is to work 21 straight days. Don't even miss one. And sometimes you're going to be stressed for time. You're going to get home and it's going to be 10:30. You're going to, I haven't even had time to throw yet. Well, the sock will allow you to throw in your bedroom, your garage, your basement, and living room. And it doesn't matter if your weather is bad, you can get your throwing in. So the DuraThrow sock becomes an incredible value. Each drill listed is on our website: COG1, COG2, COG3, COG4, COG6. Obviously, the execution of any drill is critically important to maximizing the process and reducing and eliminating the movement pattern inefficiency. Make certain you're performing each drill exactly correctly, or training corruption will and can result, and your results will be minimized. So after 21 days, a lot of people go, okay, well, I did pretty good, and I hit 21 days in a row, and my postural disconnect is pretty good now. It's really improved. Okay, great. What are you going to do now? Well, what you're not going to do is just hope that it never comes back. What you're going to do, just like the reason that you brush your teeth twice a day, the reason that you shower most days, is because not because you haven't done it before. You're just continually weeding the garden, making sure that that gets better, that gets more locked in, and if it needs to be changed or your weeds picked from your garden, you can do that. So if you need assistance in your plan for eliminating your postural inefficiency, please contact our DuraThrow coordinator, coordinator. He will provide general assistance if you desire, based on your weekly written schedule, and he will assist you in designing your own personal throwing program. Don't just say, hey, I need some help. Can you just tell me what to do? You need to send him your schedule and say, look, looks like I'm pretty busy on Monday and Wednesday, but I have some time on Tuesdays and Fridays, and that's what my schedule looks like, and can you help me with that? And he can, but he's not going to write it without your expressed contributions and involvement in the process. So after you eliminate or significantly reduce your postural disconnection, now what next? Well, you can now go on to a velocity enhancement program. You can go to command enhancement. You can go to recovery enhancement. And in 4 weeks, we can assess again and keep a new training emphasis. This way, we get to continually weed your garden and keep working on the exact things you need to work on. Most athletes just slowly drift off track, or when they get off track, they never correct their course until there's a problem. And that's a really bad idea. So should you continue on with DuraThrow? People ask me all the time, well, if you're just a recreational player and you just like baseball and you have really no desire to play past high school, it's just a fun game, then I don't think you need to stay with DuraThrow unless you have some sort of arm issue or some sort of limitation that's really keeping you from really enjoying the game. However, if you have desire past high school and you want to pitch at the college level or possibly the professional level, you need, I would say you absolutely need to stay on DuraThrow. And here's why. I talk to Justin Verlander just about every single week, and it's almost never about the same stuff. Sometimes it's about arm health, sometimes it's about velocity, sometimes it's about technique, sometimes it's about recovery, sometimes it's about spin rate, sometimes it's about sequencing. So if somebody like Justin Verlander needs to constantly weed his garden, so do you. And so I would say that if you're really a serious pitcher, I can't think of a better thing than to be on DuraThrow. And so after you complete your 21-day protocol and you want to stay with us, it is time to video and send it to us again so we can assess your progress. And we need video of one pitch from directly 90 degrees to the open side. That's the picture of Arrieta there, and one pitch from the catcher's viewpoint. And we're looking for both those. Try not to make that game footage. It's so hard to get those exact angles. Also, make sure that it's near game speed, not half speed. Half speed won't help. It needs to be game speed, and we don't need a lot of footage. We need 1 or 2 pitches. That's it. So he can be fully lathered, and it doesn't require high volume, but we need him to be able to pitch game speed on a mound, and with spikes, and not sliding all over with turfs on dirt. We need really as game-like as possible, and then we get one from the front, and we send that in. So good luck with getting rid of your postural disconnection, and keep getting after it. You can reach us at the Texas Baseball Ranch, and there's our address, there's our phone number, there's our fax, and then also there's our website address, and then also if you need to get a hold of us in the office, Anna in the office, there's our email address is info@texasbaseballranch.com. So I really wish you the best of luck on eliminating this postural disconnection. It is very important. It is very important for arm health and durability. It's very important for velocity enhancement, and it's exceptionally important for command and health and durability. So until I see you again, keep getting after it, and we'll see you soon back here at the ranch.